Welcome to the 24th episode of the Python tutorial series. Today we will pick up where we left off last week and learn how to produce a scatter plot and a line chart. Let's start with the first. This is called a scatter plot and typically contains data points related to experiments. In our case, let's just write the x and y coordinates of various points where the x-coordinate relates to the horizontal axis and the y-coordinate relates to the vertical axis. In particular, we will write a list containing all of the x-coordinates and a second list containing all of the y-coordinates. Like this. We can call it x, and that will be equal to 1, 4, 3, 6, 2, 8, 7, 5. And again, we can write a list of y coordinates, and that will be equal to 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 7, 6, and let's say 5. Now, to create the plot, we can write plt.figure. This tells the code to generate a new plot. Then we can say plt.scatter of x, y. This is the command that actually plots the values. As you can see, it requires its inputs as a list or array of x-coordinates and separately a list or array of y-coordinates. Finally, we can write plt.show. This allows us to display the graph correctly. Now let's run the code by clicking on the F5 key. And there you have it. We have successfully generated our first graph. However, as you can see, it looks rather poor in quality. So let's try to make it look better by adding in a background grid, labels on each axis, and a title. We can do these by writing plt.grid, plt.xlabel, and we will give it an argument, let's say x coordinates, plt.ylabel, and this will be y coordinates, and then plt.title, and that will be our first scatter plot. We can also write plt.tightLayout. What this does is it minimizes any white spaces around the plot. Now we click on the F5 key, and there you go. Our first ever scatter plot is complete. Now let's move on to our second graph for today, a line chart. This is very similar to a scatter plot. So, as before, let's generate separate lists containing x and y coordinates. We can say x equals 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and y equals 7, 6, 5, 4, 2, 1. Also, as before, we can write plt.figure to generate a new chart, but this time we use a different command, albeit with similar syntax, called plot. So we write plt.plot. We can again give it arguments x and y, which are the x and y coordinates. And then, as before, we can add the following lines. plt.grid, plt.xlabel, and give it x coordinates, plt.ylabel, and give it y coordinates, plt.title, and say our first line chart and plt.tight layout. Finally, we can display the graph by typing plt.show and running the code using the F5 key. Now that's how you can quickly generate your own custom line chart. There are also many more features available in Matplotlib when generating these types of graphs. I'll leave a link to the entire Matplotlib guide in the video description, so make sure to check that out. But first, let's look at a very useful command which allows us to limit the range of values displayed on the X and Y axes. In particular, if we set the initial value of the x-axis to 0, we can write plt.xlim 0. If we run the code, you can now see that the x-axis starts from 0. Let's say that we now want the x-axis to reach all the way to 10. We can implement that very easily by modifying line 15 to be plt.xlim 0, 10. Now you can see that the x-axis range has been correctly set to be between 0 and 10. We can do the same for the y-axis by typing plt.ylim 0, 10. If we run the code, you can see that it now has had the same effect as before, except that now it has altered the y-axis instead. With that, we have finally reached the end of today's tutorial. Next week we will look at more complex graphs such as pie charts and bar charts. Make sure you don't miss the episode by subscribing to the channel and enabling notifications. Also, don't forget to check out my other tutorial videos and coding challenges. You can find a link to both of these in the top right-hand corner of your screen and in the video description. I look forward to seeing you next week for a new and exciting tutorial. And until then, happy coding!